Hello, everyone, and welcome to Global Vegfest. I'm Katrina Fox, and I'm the founder of Vivas, which is a global community and membership program for vegan women. We're delighted to be able to host a couple of live streams here at Global Vegfest. Yesterday, we had a wonderful panel, Women Making Waves in Sustainable Fashion. And if you missed that, don't worry, because there is a recording, and I highly recommend you go and check that one out. If you'd like to find out more about Vivas, the website is thevivasnetwork.com. Now, today we're kicking off with a fabulous panel discussion. I think one of the exciting things, and for me and for lots of people, I've been vegan for 25 years. So for someone who's been vegan for that amount of time, I am loving seeing the growth of veganism, and particularly across the globe. And I'm delighted that we are kicking off with a panel on women growing veganism across the globe. We've got some wonderful panelists who are going to be covering their work and what's happening in various parts of the world. And it's going to be a great discussion. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce our host, Hira Chowdhury, and our panelists. Over to you, Hira.
Thank you so much, Katrina. We're excited to do this. And I'm here with Sunny and Sarah. And we have one more guest who's going to be joining us. Her name is Carolina. So I'll start with just some brief introductions of our panelists. So I'll start, Sunny, with you. So Sunny's mission is to promote veganism and increase access to wealth creation opportunities across Africa. Sunny became an entrepreneur in 2019 and is a bioengineer by training and has worked in the biomechanics industry and the nonprofit sector. Sunny started investing in African businesses in early 2021, and Vegan AF operations are powered through global investments in their crypto VAF. Sunny hopes to inspire others to support the Vegan AF movement so we can all look forward to an equitable and regenerative future. Welcome, Sunny. So glad to have you. And Sarah Ali Biari is an Egyptian-American attorney and social media manager who helped to create the Vegan Muslim Community and the Vegetarian Vegan Society of Egypt, which guides thousands of members worldwide to live healthier plant-based lifestyles. She's been a vegan for over 10 years and is passionate about climate change and animal welfare. She's also an experienced vegan chef, offering cooking classes and catering services and healthy raw food and plant-based meals under the name #Yumcore. And so I'll introduce Carolina when she joins us. And for myself, my name is Hera, and I've been a vegan almost 10 years as well. I guess I could say I'm in a vegan romance. My significant other and soulmate is also a vegan, so it's been a journey for us together for some years now. So this panel today, we're going to be talking with you all about ways that women are growing veganism around the world. So I wanted to start by asking Sarah and Sunny to share a little bit about their current work and their efforts towards growing veganism across the globe. So Sarah, we'll start with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk with both of you and Carolina soon. I think the most important thing in my work at the Veg Society of Egypt is just being a good example for the members and, kind of re-educating them. A lot of the cuisine in Egypt is already vegan. And so when people want to make changes to their health or whatever reason they want to try it out, I have to just remind them, fool, falafel, hummus, eggplant, all these things that people already love and eat every day, just keep eating that, or take the same dishes and just don't put meat in it. And it's still delicious and it's fine, and then they're like, oh, okay, this is a lot easier and I feel better. And they really do notice a difference. And that's when the change becomes permanent. So just, trying to be that good example, not really force it upon everyone. And then just, education is my number one priority.
Falafel and hummus are definitely staples in my diet, yes. Sunny, how about you?
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Hira, for the awesome introduction. My name is Sunny Saatva. I'm the founder of the Vegan Africa Fund, and I've been vegan for about 6 years. and spent the last year, majority of the last year in East Africa, beginning to build this directory of vegan businesses. And I was living in Mombasa on the Kenya coast, and realized that my local vegan business, Vegan Basket, wanted to expand and had this amazing vision for their operations, but didn't have access to capital in order to do that. And I was able to invest in them and realized that there's a whole network and a whole movement of amazing sustainable businesses and eco entrepreneurs across the continent that have been historically underfunded, and they need access to more wealth creation opportunities in order to scale their businesses and ultimately scale the vegan evolution. And my vision for the future, I truly see Africa as a whole emerging as a leader in sustainability, in veganism, and really across the board in many industries. And I'm very excited to be at the beginning of these making waves. I'm really excited to, speak with Sarah about the work with Dutch Society of Egypt. I'm really interested in some of your strategies and outreach efforts. And ultimately, I believe that this is a really awesome panel. I just want to shout out Vivas and thank them for including women across the spectrum of women at the Vegan Africa Fund. We are working to make sure we're bridging the equity gap where women are severely underinvested, actually receiving less than 5% of venture capital investment globally. So we have a personal mission to invest at least 60% of our funds into sustainable women-led businesses. And we believe that that includes women, everyone who identifies as women, including trans women, non-binary women like myself. And I want to thank Vivas for their inclusivity as a platform as well. And I'm incredibly excited just to announce that the Vegan Africa Fund is closing our first round at the end of Veganuary, January 31st, in order to support our network of vegan businesses. Thank you, Hira. And so really incredibly excited about all of the momentum we have behind us.
I know I want to apply for these funds and programs. There's a whole lot of people in Egypt that have great ideas and they need that direction and entrepreneur mentorship. So we'll definitely stay in touch after this.
Absolutely. And I think having access to the network and really growing the Pan-African network is going to be a huge part of this. In the past 60 years, there's been a severe decrease in Pan-African food trade, where right now more than 70% of all the food that's traded across African borders are actually going internationally. And instead, what we really want to promote is, locally sourced food as much as possible on the continent, because Africa is in a huge food trade deficit right now. And it's pretty severe. Every single year, $40 billion more worth of food products are imported into Africa than what's being exported. And these are things that, in order to produce high value vegan products, like all of the, plant-based substitutes that we love and all of these awesome products, you really need machinery, you need infrastructure, and these are investments that you need a sum of capital at the beginning to be able to really scale your business. And we know that this is harder to access across Africa, but there's still so many entrepreneurs with incredible visions, incredible missions, great MVPs. And it's really about helping them get the infrastructure in place so that they can compete on a global scale.
Exactly.
Amazing. So I want to ask then, kind of just to get a sense, how do you guys define veganism? Because I know for many people it means different things. For many people it might mean a combination of things. And what's in a word? It's just a term. But what is veganism really mean to you both? And what's your definition of vegan? Or do you use a different term?
I have struggled with this definition, try to explain to people. It depends on the audience too, because if you say, especially in Egypt, oh, I'm vegan, they're like, what's that? Vegan, or I'm like, okay, well, I don't eat animals. Okay, what about fish? okay, I don't eat, they'll go through the list of things. But a fish is not an animal. A fish is in the water, or they go through. I don't eat meat. And they're like, what about chicken? Chicken is meat is not beef, to them. So it's like, no, I don't eat living things. What about plants? Plants are living. So you kind of have to just the back and forth trying to explain things, because what's interesting is that there is no word for vegan in Arabic, and there's different things that describe the diet. So if you go certain times of the year, the word is siyam, it means fasted. So people are fasting from animal products, and there's a large number of Coptic and Christian people in Egypt, and they fast more than 200 days of the year for different religious holidays. And so you'll find a lot of siyami menus at restaurants, which is amazing because it's vegan, basically. So you can just ask for a siyami menu, and you'll know that the kitchen has prepared it separate from, the regular food. And then there's other words, like khodra, which means like green, like I'm, khodari or something, like I only consume green things or something like that. So there's a lot of descriptive words for basically being vegan, but there isn't an official vegan word. But for me personally, I just want to do as little harm as possible to the environment, to animals, to my body. So whatever that means, just to do as little harm as possible.
I love that definition of veganism, Sarah. I think do no harm, have compassion is definitely where I'd start with my own definition as well. But for me, I am just recently celebrating my 6 years vegan anniversary. But originally I went, thank you. Yeah, it's so exciting.
It's a big deal.
It is. It feels really good. But I was reflecting on that recently, and I realized the first year or so of me being vegan, I was eating plant-based, and it was very much for my health. And then I got a job in the field of biomechanics where I was working in a research lab that was doing some serious animal testing. And being exposed to that every single day. I mean, my job was data analysis. I was on the computer, so I wasn't directly working with the animals. But whenever I would go and see them, I could, feel the suffering and understand that the way we as humans have commoditized other beings is truly, perpetuating this cycle of suffering and harm that is ultimately, in the grand scheme, the same cycle that's affecting our planet. And it's something that we have to really break free of consciously. And so it was really only 5 years ago that I began to identify as vegan for the animals, vegan to do no harm, vegan because we don't have to initiate these cycles of suffering. There's many alternatives that we can explore. And so for me, it really is vegan is having compassion. And just eating plant-based. I think whole foods plant-based is also been more of the direction of going lately. And it is about listening to my body and doing what feels the best for me while maintaining that compassion in every action I can in life.
You're reminding me of a film that I saw one time in DC at an environmental film fest, and it was called The Last Pig. And it was about a farmer. It was a pig farmer who just grew this relationship over time with the pigs. And he's in the movie. It's kind of a documentary about him and his just transition and transformation of how, like, the pigs that he was taking to the slaughterhouse, he started to get haunted by them. And then he completely changed his whole farm into a vegetable farm after he just couldn't take it anymore. So check that out, The Last Pig. It's a really sweet film. But that's what you're making me think of that. As well, because I look around and I'm like, where are all the animals? Where are all of them? Especially in California, where it's just such a great environment to be an animal in so many places. So I think about that a lot as well. So then that takes me to my next question, which is kind of what, beyond just like your definition and how you defined it, what was the thing that moved you, and what was the thing that inspired you to make the change, and how has that enabled you to grow veganism, and how has that initial motivation and inspiration enabled your efforts further? So Sarah, start with you.
Sure. I love talking about the vegan origin stories. I was hoping that was where we were going next. I went vegan for health. It wasn't about the animals. My dad had passed away of a heart attack when he was 63, and I didn't want that to happen to me. We have a lot of health issues in my family, which if you've seen What the Health or Game Changers or Forks Over Knives, you'll know these things aren't hereditary. It's more habitual, it's traditional, it's cultural. People are not, I think, predestined to these food, related diseases. If they make certain changes to their lifestyle, and they can reverse diabetes, they can reverse heart disease, they can take control of their health. And I really didn't want to be a burden on my family and the people around me. So, and especially in Egypt, when it's almost insulting when you don't accept the food from, your aunties that have cooked all this delicious stuff. And, if I tell them like, no, I don't want to have a heart attack, they're like, okay, they like shut up. They don't even question it, and they understand because they're all the same too, and their doctors have told them to make changes. And, they'll pull me off in the corner and be like, our doctor said we should eat like you, but, it's too hard and we don't know how to do it and whatever. And I'm just like, it's not hard at all. Let me show you. And I like to say that there's kind of an auntie hotline whenever I'm, at one aunt's house and the other one, they're all like on a group call together. Like, what did she eat at your house? How did you make it? They're like, oh, she liked this, but she didn't like this. And it's like so funny to me that they care so much and they just want me to be fed. But it's, and again, with it, in Egypt, you just have to educate people. They can still eat the same things that they like with simple alternatives and substitutions. Instead of butter or some sort of animal fat, just use a margarine or vegetable oils. Instead of chunks of meat, just to have the vegetable dish without it, and it still tastes delicious. And it's and it's really like I think becoming more popular now to and it's not even like a vegan substitution. Like they're using the same things that they already have and just I guess rediscovering them. They're eating like their grandparents used to before like Westernism became popular, and McDonald's and KFC delivery and things like that were so convenient now. And reminding people like, no, just have more whole food plant-based diets and eat like your grandparents did. And they're like, oh yeah, I remember this was so delicious. I used to eat it growing up, and I think they tend to make that switch too. So I try to be that example. And then now I'm all for animal welfare, of course. And it's kind of a hard concept in Egypt because they don't, depending on, I don't know, there's two different schools of thought. Either like be compassionate to animals, but only certain animals, because some they're okay to eat. And then there's a whole school of thought behind halal food. And I'm really passionate about like what is halal and what's not, because I think it's such an almost impossible standard to meet if it's done correctly. And it's never done correctly. So it might as well not be halal, might as well eat pork or whatever, just because, the animals are killed in front of each other. They're killed too young. They're raised in filthy conditions. Like these things are not halal. They should not be eaten, and you find the meat is hanging on these chains on the butcher shops, which are on the street, open to this car pollution and flies and bugs and birds and whatever. And it's like that food that, half a cowhide or whatever had been sitting out for God knows how many days. It's like, that is not fresh. It's not honoring the animal. It's disgusting, and it was so funny whenever like visitors or like family from outside of Egypt come to Egypt, and everyone gets sick, like from eating the local food, and it must have been the salad, or they always blame the salad for like getting diarrhea or whatever. And I'm just like, no, it's not from the salad. It's from like the horrible food, meat and dairy things that you're eating, and it's not processed nicely. It's not refrigerated. It's just not prepared in a healthy way, and it's not, you know, fair to the animals. So and then so the other school of thought for Egypt too is like animals are not sentient beings. Like dogs are all over the place, stray cats are all over the place, and people treat them really cruelly, and a lot of people don't like cats in Egypt, which is weird because they used to worship them in ancient Egypt. And you find them just like very, you know, neglected, just abused looking conditions. And it breaks my heart every time I go. I want to adopt all the cats. And I do sponsor a lot of pets and animals in sanctuaries in Egypt. But it's just trying to trying to remind people about some of the Islamic stories about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that, you know, the way he was so compassionate to animals and would never you know, harm you know, a bird that had babies that were taken from its nest. There's so many stories from the Quran and from the Prophet's life, you know, that I grew up, you know, knowing never to abuse dogs, or never to leave a cat locked in a closet so that it can't access, you know, bugs or food or something to sustain itself. You know, the story of the woman who gave a dog some water from the well, like filling up her shoe to feed the dog because it was like so thirsty. And this woman, I think, you know, I want to say she was a prostitute or something. She was already like destined like a sinful woman, but because she did that, all her sins were forgiven and she went to heaven. You know, so it's just reminding people about like, we're supposed to be kind to animals, you know, religiously, and, you know, just as a human being, you know, we want to take care of our environment and everything around us and all the creatures that take care of us too. So, you know, when you remind people of that sort of thing, they kind of like calm down, and, you know, they hopefully change their ways too.
Sarah, I love both the historical context you put that in, but also, you know, for me, a big part of why I embraced a vegan diet is it's really, you know, there's this term like decolonizing your diet, or really returning to the roots. And when you look at a lot of traditional African dishes, I mean, even in Ethiopia, there's the same fasting tradition where more than 200 days out of the year, everyone's eating plant-based. That's a very old tradition. And so it really is something that I feel like is very much in tune with human nature, you know, down to our biology, down to our teeth in our mouth and the way that our brains function for us to eat a plant-based diet. And as far as like, you know, the religious component goes, I'm really interested to get a little bit of your thoughts and strategy, because all across Africa, of course, Islam is huge. And when holidays come up, like Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Mubarak, Eid al-Fitr, we have this culture that we see of this animal gifting where people will gift, you know, goats or things like that. And it's, you know, these are animals that are slaughtered, and it's very regular, it's very routine. And I guess I'm wondering, for you and your outreach and your activism, are there any, you know, specific passages in the Quran or specific ways that you can kind of communicate that there's a better way to, you know, help feed the poor, or help feed people who are in need, who are hungry, to celebrate and, you know, have these feasts and without the animal sacrifice component?
That's a really good question. You know, like it is hard to talk about this in Egypt because there's very strict rules about, you know, disparaging the religion, or, you know, they'll say this is blasphemy. And in the group itself, we forbid any religious discussion or debates, just because as you know, as far as the Veg Society of Egypt, we include everybody. We have lots of people who are not Muslim, even though it's an Egypt-based group. You know, we have members all over the world. They come from all faiths or no faith. You know, it's really hard to talk about openly in Egypt about stuff like this. But, you know, everyone wants to talk about it. And when I answer questions, it has to be, you know, very contextual. I think if I start off, you know, if the Prophet Muhammad was alive today and saw factory farming, he would ban it. You know, he wouldn't support this cycle of abuse, The amount of waste with factory farming, not just to the animals themselves, but like the runoff and the pollution and things like that with the environment. And just the whole, anybody watching this is probably already familiar with like the horrors of factory farming and breeding the animals and raping them and things like that, killing the males. And I just don't think that would be okay. So what happens during Eid? And Eid means feast. But Eid al-Adha and is the big holiday that people sacrifice an animal culturally and traditionally. And a lot of people now are trying to reduce that. I think, especially as veganism grows in the Muslim community, and it's very, very, very small, and I could probably name all the Muslims in the world that I've met who are vegan, but, I think to me, having that gift to the poor is such a temporary, relief. It's like, here's one meal out of a cow. But that's not sustainable at all. Like, how about a well that's going to give water for years and years to come? Use that same money in a way that's, plant trees that's going to give fruits for many decades, things like that. I feel are better investments. And so I try to encourage those sorts of things. And at least within my own family, they know now, like, I grew up sacrificing lambs and my dad made me watch, while, it was a holiday and preparing the meals with my family. And, before I went vegan, I ate everything, except pork. So I don't miss the food. I just think it's like not necessary. Sorry, I have blood clots in my lungs, so I'm like just recovering from that, but bear with me. There are a lot of verses in the Quran, and I've been researching for several years, and I want to write a book called the Sunnah Diet. And it's basically all the times fruits or vegetables are mentioned in the Quran or in the Hadith, which is like stories about the Prophet's life. He had a companion that was basically vegetarian, and he never said that was wrong. There's a lot of examples of all the food that's mentioned in heaven are fruits and vegetables. Like, it's never mentioned that you're going to eat meat when you go to heaven. So I was like, oh, well, I don't eat whatever they're eating, because clearly that's like the best food that God invented, made perfect. So things like that. I think there's stories about the Prophet only eating dates and water for months at a time, and people had mentioned like, oh, we didn't notice any smoke coming from your home. What have you been eating? And he didn't himself eat meat that often. He was mostly vegetarian. And so just to remind people, if like they're really trying to emulate the Prophet's life and his behaviors, and he didn't really eat that much meat. And back then, meat was such a luxury. As you know, it was very difficult for people to afford it. That's why they celebrate it and only have it maybe that once a year as a gift. If somebody was so kind and generous to share that. But other than that, the rest of the year, they're eating beans and fruits and vegetables. So it's really, if you want to go the traditional route or the religious route, there's always a way to find an argument to support whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Thank you so much for sharing those gems with me. I really love that. The Prophet Muhammad would condemn factory farming if he saw it today. And this is like, a revelation for me that all the foods eaten in heaven are plant-based. In the Quran, to me, that's like, if you want to create heaven on earth, that's how you have to eat. So I really love that. Thank you for offering that perspective, because it's something that I have been asked a lot myself. I've been seeing a lot, what is the most sensitive and impactful way to have this conversation. And I think that these were all just excellent points. So thank you.
Yeah, Sarah, I do hope you write that book. That is amazing. And I think it will transform how a lot of people think. And maybe prevent some wagging fingers from aunties and uncles. That's really, really awesome. So I wanted to ask you both about, oh, and by the way, I think my favorite Sunnah foods would probably be dates and watermelon. Those are my favorites. So I wanted to ask you both kind of about, because you're both working in different, slightly similar regions, but still unique environments and ecosystems. So I wanted to ask, what are emerging trends or themes that are either impacting your work, or trends or themes that you're trying to, ride the wave with to really push forward what you're doing? So what are some of the big emerging trends or themes that are most kind of present in the work that you're doing right now? And let's start with Sunny this time.
Oh, switching it up. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as far as the global emerging themes, I think in the Western world, especially, we're seeing this trend towards eating a more vegan diet. However, across a lot of Africa and in the developing world as a whole, you really are seeing a trend towards adopting the standard Western diet, which is consuming more animal-based products than historically they ever had. Like, even to go beyond Africa, the Indian subcontinent, for the first time in recorded written history, is now more than 50% eating meat. And this is, I think, a product of this mentality, this global mentality, that meat is a luxury, like Sarah was talking about, but also that meat equals wealth. And we see that, across East Africa, across Africa as a whole, that in a lot of households and in a lot of societies, there's been this kind of narrative that, once you make it, or once you're successful, you have to have meat on your table. And if you don't provide that for your family, it's like, okay, why aren't you, if you can afford meat, why wouldn't you buy it and give it to your family? And so I think that this conception, combined with the fact that the developing world is creating more wealth and is gaining more opportunities, you're actually seeing a trend towards eating more meat in some areas. And then there's also this divergence point where, it's something really interesting that Sarah said, eat like your grandparents is in Kenya. When I'm talking to somebody, ask them if they're vegan, they're way more likely to tell me, oh, my grandma is vegan, or, oh, my great grandma is 100 years old, she's been vegan her whole life. Like, I've got that one like 5 times. And so I think there's also a trend of realizing how eating plant-based has, led to your grandparents and your great grandparents' longevity. And then you maybe look at your parents, or one generation or two generations above, who are suffering from heart disease and diabetes, because those are also trends where 60 years ago, diabetes and heart disease was almost non-existent. And then now across Africa, you're seeing the emergence of these health problems. And I think Sarah touched on it really awesome earlier, that it's not genetic, it's cultural, where you might have the genes that have a higher affinity towards developing some of these illnesses, but those genes don't get turned on until you're consuming the animal products that are actually triggering your body. And so I think that's kind of a negative trend that we're really bringing attention to with, conversation, education, and sharing as well the messages of these documentaries like What the Health, that actually explain that these very common diseases, where I think in America the number one killer is heart disease, right? But these very common diseases are highly preventable. And I think that's a trend that I'm very excited about, is realizing where, as much as I'm vegan for the animals and I want to see that more compassionate world, I also think that humans are inherently selfish in a way. And when you can directly translate a vegan diet to your personal health, you're going to live longer. You will have, you'll have more energy and feel better. People are realizing that's how they want to feel. And so along with those kinds of trends in the plant-based food market in Africa, we're also seeing amazing, huge growth where there's a a really big and exciting side of that I'm really interested in is fermentation, where they're seeing things like fermented cashew cheese or fermented coconut yogurt, and things like kombucha, or these, drinks that really just enhance the quality of your gut bacteria. That's something I'm personally really interested in, as well as the plant-based meat and substitute market. There are, we have this directory that we've been developing with the Vegan Africa Fund that's now over 300 businesses that are, vegan operated, sustainable, and they're focused on providing these products or services for their local market. And it feels like every week we're adding on top of this, adding to the directory. So it feels like it's this period of really explosive growth. And I believe, the global vegan community has to come together and support the sustainable development of Africa, because there's a lot of the funds that are being invested currently is perpetuating the same old cycles where you see, this company got this billion-dollar investment into industrial agriculture or things that are really not sustainable. And so one thing at the Vegan Africa Fund that we're also really interested in and investing in is regenerative agriculture and food forests. And so there's a ton of awesome projects going on around, reforestation, building more sustainable food ecosystems. And I think that is a trend that we really have to amplify, because we have to, rewild the earth, and we have to create more regenerative systems, as opposed to just, taking from the earth and feeding it all the fertilizers and those chemical products. I think really creating symbiotic systems for food production and creating this whole cycle that's really sustainable, I think is very important. And that's something we're seeing emerge, which I'm really excited about.
Thanks, Sunny. Sarah, what about you? Emerging trends and themes that are influencing your work?
I think having role models in Egypt has really helped grow the movement. One of the most famous comedians in Egypt, he was a doctor, and he is vegan. He moved to America, and he had a program called Plant B, talking about Bassem Youssef, and this program was aired during Ramadan, and people normally have nothing better to do than fast and watch TV or YouTube. So it was amazing that he did this program in Arabic and English subtitles, and it, based on his experiences as a cardiologist, he had a lot of patients that had heart issues, and it was all it was all diet based. Sorry. And so with his program, he helped millions of people in the Middle East learn about plant-based diets. So I noticed, at the time in my group, the first year we had like a few hundred members. We started the group about 6 years ago, and every year it increased like a few thousand members each year. But that 1 month, we got like 5,000 new members just because of his program. And it was amazing. Everyone wanted to try, veganism, and mostly people think of it as like to lose weight, which is whatever. Like, I don't care why they're doing it. Like eventually they learn the rest of it about animal welfare and sustainability and, things that benefit the earth and the environment. If they're there to lose weight, that's fine too. Look and try to find healthy ways to do that. But, just having him introduce people to this new way of living and answer all their questions, and in a way that was, culturally relevant, so that, they can understand how to do it. It was so important. So, if we had more, it sounds kind of weird, but to have like more local celebrity or popular role models to explain these things, people really, attach that to, I guess, they get motivated by it. They learn better about it, and it becomes like a new trendy thing. So it's like it's like the new fashion or something. I love it if we had more of that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'll have to check it out. I haven't seen any of that. Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm just going to ask you, I think we're just close to wrapping up our time. So if you just could share your final closing thoughts, words of wisdom, or what what you hope people will take away from just this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Hira, so much for hosting us, for all of the amazing questions. And this was a really fun conversation. I'm really excited about the future of vegan businesses across Africa. And I just want to remind, the global audience or whoever is listening that the world really needs to come together and support these sustainable initiatives where right now Africa is the fastest growing continent, 17% of the global population, but expected to be a quarter of the population in less than 30 years. However, 17% of the global population is receiving less than 1% of venture capital funding every single year. This has been a huge funding gap in every sense of the word for centuries, and this is something that we have to come together to work to resolve. So if you're interested in getting involved with the Vegan Africa Fund, first of all, thank you. That would be amazing. You can reach out to us at hello@veganafricafund.com. Check out our website, veganafricafund.com. And if you're ready to invest in the VAF crypto supporting sustainable African businesses, you can go to veganafricafund.com/invest. And thank you again to Vivas for bringing us together for this panel. Thank you to Global Vegfest, who has done an amazing job in coordinating and hosting this amazing festival. And I just want to kind of say I'm grateful for this, festival vibe, because the real beauty about festivals is it brings together different cultures and it brings together different perspectives to allow us to, combine that and share and ultimately come out of it with more, knowledge, connections, and opportunities. So I'm very happy to have met you all, and just grateful to be here. Thank you.